The urban legend of the clown statue is a chilling tale that's been circulating online and in casual conversation since at least the early 2000s. At its core, this legend tells the story of a babysitter who grows increasingly uneasy about a strange statue in the home where she's been hired to watch children. When she contacts the parents to ask for permission to cover up or move the disturbing figure, they respond with confusion and alarm. They reveal that they don't own a clown statue and urge her to leave the house immediately. According to the legend, it's then discovered that what was presumed to be a statue was actually a person, sometimes an escaped criminal, disguised as a clown. The legend generally leaves it up to the imagination what the clown intended to do in the home. This urban legend has never been substantiated by reliable sources or confirmed through reputable news outlets. Fact-checking websites such as Snopes have categorized it among many babysitter-related horror tales that highlight the vulnerability of those tasked with caring for children in unfamiliar homes. Unlike documented criminal cases or verifiable reports, the clown statue lacks any credible evidence of its occurrence. Despite its fictional status, it continues to spread, partly because it taps into common human fears. Fear of intruders, fear of clowns, and fear of being alone in a strange place. There's no single known origin point for this tale. Instead, it likely emerged as a variation on older babysitter horror stories, such as the famous Babysitter and the Man Upstairs tale, which dates back to the 1960s. Over time, as the internet became more accessible and storytelling forms flourished, the clown motif was added, reflecting the broader cultural discomfort many people have with them. By incorporating a clown into a classic home intruder narrative, the legend leverages a modern fear, making it even more memorable and shareable. One reason this particular legend endures is the ease with which it can be adapted to modern settings. It can take place in any suburban home, any small town, or any city. Unlike other urban legends tied to specific times or locations, the clown statue thrives on its plausibility that it might have taken place in your own city or town. The story could just as easily be set in a big coastal metropolis as it could be in the rural Midwest. As long as people continue to hire babysitters and clowns remain associated with unease rather than entertainment, the story will retain its power. The Garloids are a peculiar and modern internet urban legend that emerged from the murky depths of 4chan. This contemporary legend revolves around an odd, unsettling image: a man filling a pig's stomach with tap water. While initially mundane, this photograph took on an unexpected life of its own online, eventually becoming associated with an enigmatic creature that 4chan users began to call a Garloid. The original image first appeared in an unassuming culinary blog post documenting the preparation of ponce. This is a traditional Cajun dish involving the cleaning, stitching, and stuffing of a pig's stomach, with various seasonings and meats. In the process of testing the integrity of the stitched stomach, the blogger had filled it with tap water to ensure it would hold its contents during cooking. Stripped of explanation, viewers saw something that resembled a bizarre corporeal creation, part flesh, part unknown organism, poised to become the subject of collective myth-making. The term Garloid, initially coined by an anonymous user, quickly gained traction. 4chan and Reddit users enthusiastically embraced the term, speculating wildly about the creature's origin, nature, and purpose. They offered absurd theories, tongue-in-cheek explanations, and mock scientific descriptions. Because the image lacked any inherent contextual clues, participants felt free to invent lore that ranged from the comically grotesque to the pseudo-academic. Some claimed Garloids were some strange hybrid of animal and plant life, while others insisted they were an artificial construct. Others suggested they were an alien life form captured and photographed mid-feeding. As the meme gained momentum, an Urban Dictionary entry for Garloid emerged, further solidifying the concept in the digital public consciousness. This crowdsourced definition described Garloids as biological constructs displaying mammalian traits. They were warm-blooded and produced milk, but also simultaneously possessed plant-like organizational structures at the cellular level. This bizarre blending of characteristics was said to allow them to produce a milk-like substance, a secretive and questionable fluid whose exact properties became a matter of intense speculation. Also, I just have to take a moment here. I wrote secretive and questionable fluid in this script. Seriously, what was I thinking? The definition warned that Garloids required delicate care and that one should never use tap water around them, as it supposedly degraded both their health and their milk's purity and taste. On a dedicated subreddit, self-proclaimed Garloid enthusiasts began discussing best practices for keeping and milking these entities. Threads questioned everything from what temperature was best suited for Garloid husbandry to whether certain music or soothing sounds might help a Garloid produce better milk. Users shared unverified stories of hidden Garloid farms and posted doctored images of people tending to creatures that looked suspiciously like stuffed pig stomachs. Although most participants were in on the joke, this ever-expanding lore created an illusion of legitimacy, giving newcomers the impression that Garloids might indeed be real. Unsurprisingly, this layering of rumor, parody, and earnest speculation led some outsiders to believe that Garloids were genuine creatures, rather than a humorous community-built myth. The urban legend, commonly referred to as the choking Doberman, first gained widespread attention during the early 1980s. In its most well-known version, a couple returns home late at night to find their beloved Doberman pinscher choking and seemingly unable to breathe. Panicked, they rush the dog to an emergency veterinarian who sedated the animal and discovers several human fingers lodged in its throat. As the vet worked to stabilize the dog, the frantic couple returned home, only to find their kitchen or a nearby room in disarray. The implication is that a burglar had broken into the house, been attacked by the dog, and hastily fled the scene minus a few fingers. Though endlessly repeated, this story has never been verified with any confirmed documentation, and no reputable news source has ever produced evidence that it happened in reality. In the early 1980s, concerns over rising crime rates and home invasions in urban and suburban neighborhoods may have contributed to the popularity of the story. Dogs, especially powerful breeds like Dobermans, were commonly seen as protectors of the home. Thus, the tale of a guard dog heroically thwarting a burglar, albeit with a grisly twist, resonated with many listeners. In this way, the choking Doberman served as a cautionary tale. It warns of the dangers lurking just outside the family home's walls, while simultaneously reassuring homeowners that they weren't entirely defenseless against intruders. Like many urban legends, the details of the choking Doberman vary depending on the storyteller and the region. Some versions specify the couple's location as a city in the southwestern United States, while others provide no geographic details at all. Occasionally, the number of fingers found in the dog's mouth changes, and sometimes it's not fingers, but another body part. In other tellings, the couple phones the veterinarian from their home and is told, in chilling fashion, to leave the house immediately and await the authorities. In this version, the vet somehow has some sort of prescient knowledge that the burglar remains in the house, and the authorities come and apprehend him. I can only assume that in this version of the story, the thief says something like, "And I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for that meddling dog," while he shakes his nearly fingerless fist. The popularity of this legend was bolstered by its appearance in the media. A few tabloid-style publications hinted at similar incidents, further entrenching it in the public imagination. Hanako-san is a very prominent figure in Japanese folklore that I found out about recently when I saw a very oddly titled manga at a local bookstore, but I'll get to that near the end of this section. This legend tells of the spirit of a girl named Hanako who haunts school bathrooms across Japan. The tale has become deeply ingrained in Japanese culture, especially among school children, and has been depicted in various media forms. The legend of Hanako-san dates back to the 1950s. According to the story, Hanako-san is the ghost of a young girl who resides in the third stall of the girls' bathroom, typically on the third floor of a school building. To summon her, one must knock 3 times on the stall door and ask, "Hanako-san, are you there?" If she is present, she responds with, "Yes, I am." Upon opening the stall door, witnesses might see a young girl with a bobbed haircut wearing a red skirt or dress. In some versions of the tale, Hanako-san's appearance is accompanied by a bloody or ghostly hand, and she may pull the individual into the toilet, leading them to hell. Alternatively, the person might be eaten by a 3-headed lizard, claiming that they invaded Hanako's privacy. Honestly, I'm not sure which is worse, but having thought about it a bit, I'm going to roll the dice and take an encounter with the 3-headed lizard. The origins of Hanako-san's spirit vary across different accounts. In one version, she was a child during the war who hid in the school bathroom during an air raid and tragically perished. Another rendition suggests she was slain by a stranger in the third stall of a third-floor bathroom. Yet another version claims she removed herself from the world on a permanent basis in a third stall of a third-floor bathroom. Hanako-san's legend has become a widespread phenomenon in Japanese schools. Children often challenge each other to summon her, turning the tale into a test of courage. This practice has cemented Hanako-san's status as a fixture of Japanese urban folklore over the past 70 years. The legend of Hanako-san has also permeated popular culture. She has been depicted in various films, manga, anime, and video games. And to bring it back to my introduction to this section, I saw a manga called Toilet Bound Hanako at a bookstore a couple weeks back, and naturally had to Google the name. That, of course, led me down the rabbit hole of this urban legend. Because hey, how can that title not catch your eye? Anyway, apparently in Toilet Bound Hanako, the traditionally female entity is gender swapped to be a ghost boyfriend for a lonely high school girl or something like that. I probably butchered that summary of the story and lost a good deal of my weeb street cred, so let's just keep that between us. Mystery meat is a term used to describe meat products of ambiguous composition, appearance, or origin, often served in institutional settings such as school cafeterias, hospitals, or prisons. The term typically invokes the idea that the diner can't readily identify the type of meat they're eating, whether it's beef, pork, chicken, or a blend of several animal sources. Historically, mystery meat gained prominence in mid-20th century American popular culture. It appeared in jokes about cafeteria meals, military ration kits, and cheap diners serving patrons questionable. The foods that fit into this category are often highly processed, heavily seasoned, and presented in forms like patties, nuggets, or loaves that obscure their actual ingredients. And seriously, while I love homemade meatloaf, the idea of a school cafeteria serving me a quote-unquote loaf of undifferentiated meat is somewhat off-putting. For example, certain forms of processed lunch meat, canned meat products, and low-quality sausages have sometimes been labeled mystery meat. The concept has spawned a variety of urban legends about what, exactly, might be lurking in these unidentifiable slabs of protein. These tales, often exchanged in whispered tones among students in lunch lines or passed along through social media, evoke a shared anxiety about a lack of transparency in our food system. Perhaps the most innocuous version of this is that the mystery meats are just less desirable parts of regular animals like pigs and cows. Under this formulation, this meat is all snouts and intestines. One of the most persistent urban legends is the idea that school cafeterias or fast food chains rely on substandard ingredients such as ground-up rats, pigeons, or other vermin. This story often circulates without solid evidence, fueled primarily by the anxiety that large institutions are willing to cut corners to save money. However, government inspectors regularly monitor meat plants and food service providers to ensure compliance with sanitation and safety standards. This, of course, makes the intentional inclusion of such repulsive ingredients both illegal and highly unlikely. While isolated cases of contamination can occur, the likelihood that any major institution would knowingly serve rodent meat as a substitute for beef or chicken is virtually non-existent. Another class of legends involves the notion that school lunch meats, particularly in underfunded school districts, contain large percentages of non-meat fillers. These ingredients, such as soy, cereal grains, or other plant byproducts, make the meat look very off, giving rise to the suspicion that what appears to be meat might be something else entirely. And having previously attended a public school, I can confirm that this urban legend is basically true. Seriously, I don't know how they got away with feeding us that trash. The urban legend known as the White Death is a piece of contemporary internet folklore that has made its rounds on various social media platforms since the early 2000s. While the exact origin and author of this story remain unknown, it's commonly classified as a creepypasta or a short horror story shared online. However, like other creepypastas such as Slender Man, as time has passed, the original fictional nature of the narrative has been forgotten, and it's entered the realm of urban legend. At its core, the White Death story revolves around an elusive, vengeful entity that allegedly appears to those who become aware of its existence. According to the narrative, once a person learns about the White Death, this being is said to stalk them relentlessly, with the sole purpose of erasing any knowledge of itself from the world. The legend claims that the entity does not simply end its victims. Instead, it tears them apart, removing all traces that they ever existed, including photographs or records. The victim, in essence, vanishes so completely that they become an absence rather than a memory. This concept, an entity that hunts you purely for the crime of knowing it, plays deeply into the psychological fear of forbidden knowledge and inescapable fate. The White Death is usually depicted as a girl or a woman with an unsettling appearance. In many versions of the tale, she's said to have pale skin and hollow eyes, giving her a ghostly or cadaverous look. While traditional urban legends often involve more tangible supernatural beings like ghosts or monsters that reside in a specific location, the White Death can supposedly track victims anywhere in the world. The only prerequisite for attracting it is becoming aware of it, hearing the story or reading about it, thus turning the very act of knowing into a fatal vulnerability. This aspect of the legend has made it popular among internet readers who enjoy psychologically driven horror. The White Death's growing legend can be attributed to a number of interrelated factors. First, it plays on the fear of forbidden knowledge, the idea that simply knowing something can put you in mortal danger. This concept resonates with classic horror tropes, such as cursed objects or forbidden books, but relocates the threat to the digital age where information is abundant. The inevitable nature of the creature is also a major factor that adds to the power of the legend. Unlike other ghost-related urban legends where the entity is tied to a specific location, you can't just simply leave a location and escape the White Death. The entity instead lives inside your head so long as you have knowledge of it. Also, since I know I'll get some angry comments asking why I introduced this concept to you, the watcher, I have a foolproof method for escaping this ghost. If the story makes you uncomfortable, the most effective response in the real world is to take a break, remind yourself it's not real, and focus on something more uplifting. So yeah, basically, touch grass, I guess. The Vampire Cat of Nabeshima weaves together intrigue and horror, a haunting piece of Japanese folklore set during the Edo period within the domain of the Nabeshima clan. Also, let me warn you, this pre-modern urban legend gets more than a little bit spicy, so if you can't take the heat, you may want to click ahead to the next entry using the timestamps. This powerful samurai family, who once held sway over much of what is now Saga Prefecture, provides the backdrop for a story as chilling as it was instructive to people of the era. Their world, already brimming with martial valor and intricate codes of honor, became the stage for a supernatural struggle that pitted humans against a cunning, bloodthirsty creature. The legend revolves around a sinister feline presence born out of tragedy and malice. After the death of a favored courtesan within the clan's household, a mysterious cat began prowling the corridors at night. But this was no ordinary cat. It was a bakaneko, a type of cat demon well known in Japanese myth and believed to be real during the period. In life, cats in Edo period Japan could be seen as guardians, protectors against vermin, and harbingers of good fortune. Bakanekos were cats that had been mistreated by humans and were essentially out for revenge on the entire species. The Bakaneko took on the guise of the dead courtesan, slipping into the bedchamber of Lord Nabeshima by night, where the cat disguised as a woman had relations with him. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Try not to think about it too much. The creature continually did this, draining the life force of Lord Nabeshima. And yeah, in the source material, it's quite obvious how the cat is quote-unquote draining the life force. But hey, I'm not trying to get this video demonetized. Use your imagination. As Lord Nabeshima's health waned and suspicion spread, the samurai retainers stood guard through the night, doing nothing to intervene in letting down their lord. The Bakaneko's enchantment proved too formidable. It lulled all but one into a bewitched slumber. The lone exception was not a samurai at all, but Ito Soda, a peasant soldier and guard in the lord's employ. Lacking the aristocratic lineage and martial pedigree of the samurai, Soda nevertheless embodied the very virtues they claimed as their own. Soda managed to stay up all night and see through the demon cat's illusion, slaying the creature and saving Lord Nabeshima from the threat. Grateful and impressed, Lord Nabeshima elevated Ito Soda to samurai status, granting both him and his descendants the privileges and honor that came with the title. The Hookman is one of the most enduring American urban legends, a cautionary tale often told to teenagers as a chilling reminder to remain vigilant in isolated, vulnerable situations. The story typically centers on a young couple who have driven to a secluded spot, often a lover's lane, where they hope to enjoy some time alone. As they're alone in this secluded area, they're threatened by a mysterious, hook-wielding figure lurking in the shadows. Although variations of the story exist, the central elements remain consistent. An escaped convict with a prosthetic hook for a hand, an unsuspecting pair of teens, and a near-fatal encounter. The earliest documented accounts of the Hookman legend appeared in the mid-20th century in the United States, quickly spreading through oral tradition. By the 1960s, it had become a staple of American folklore, with many parents and authority figures repeating it as a moralistic warning to adolescents. Over time, the Hookman legend spawned numerous variations, but each version retained a common motif, a hook left behind as eerie proof of a close call. In some tellings, the couple hears a scraping sound on the car's door, becomes frightened, and decides to leave quickly, only to discover a bloody hook caught on the handle at home. This signature element, an unmistakable, menacing clue, stands at the center of what makes the Hookman legend so memorable. Unlike some urban legends that can be traced back to specific local incidents or historical figures, there's no documented case of a real Hookman terrorizing secluded lovers. This hasn't stopped the story's spread. If anything, the absence of a verifiable origin has only enhanced its mystery and appeal. The fact that the Hookman legend persists, despite lacking any factual foundation as a true crime, underscores the power of narrative to influence behavior and opinion. Even in an era dominated by fact-checking and digital archives, people remain captivated by tales that tap into primordial fears of the unknown. The Kushtaka, frequently referred to as the Land Otter Man, occupies a prominent place in the oral traditions of the Tlingit people, who inhabit the Pacific Northwest coast. Within the folklore, this mysterious entity is renowned for its extraordinary shape-shifting powers, most commonly appearing as either a human or an otter. Precisely what a Kushtaka looks like in its unaltered state remains a matter of debate. There's no clear consensus on the creature's true form. Tales of the Kushtaka present a complex and often contradictory portrait. In some accounts, these beings embody malevolence. They're tricksters who lure unsuspecting travelers deep into the wilderness or onto treacherous shores, sometimes leading their victims to watery deaths. They may accomplish this by imitating the cries of an infant or the desperate pleas of a distressed woman, thereby preying upon human compassion. In contrast, other stories cast the Kushtaka in a more benevolent light. In these versions, the creature acts as a guide or rescuer, helping lost hunters find their way home and safeguarding the vulnerable against natural perils. Such duality makes it difficult to categorize the Kushtaka purely as friend or foe. Historically, Tlingit mothers and elders would share Kushtaka legends as cautionary lessons. By warning children that mischievous, supernatural beings awaited them near lonely shores and hidden streams, parents instilled respect for the often harsh, untamed environment. These stories serve both a moral and practical purpose, discouraging little ones from wandering too far from familiar territory. In the modern era, reports of Kushtaka encounters are far less common, diminishing as traditional storytelling and lifeways have evolved. Yet even today, occasional anecdotes surface. Fishermen claiming eerie encounters by moonlit waters, hikers reporting strange cries echoing through coastal forests, and more. Also, before you comment, I've tried my best to pronounce Tlingit the proper way, but I can't seem to do it without sounding like I'm spitting all over the mic. So yeah, I've decided to spare you all that and just say Tlingit. The story known as the Russian sleep experiment has gained considerable attention over the years, especially on YouTube and Reddit. It's often presented as a historical account of a grisly scientific study allegedly conducted in the late 1940s by Soviet researchers. The experiment involved test subjects who were forced to stay awake for extended periods using a mysterious stimulant. Despite its persistent presence on the internet and the chilling nature of the narrative, there's no evidence to suggest the Russian sleep experiment is a factual historical event. Rather, it's an example of a creepypasta that developed beyond its original context into a widespread urban legend. The earliest known iterations of the Russian sleep experiment story appeared online in the early 2010s. According to the narrative, Soviet-era researchers supposedly sealed 5 political prisoners in a secluded chamber, pumping in a gas intended to prevent them from sleeping. Over several days, as the story goes, the subjects descended into madness, exhibiting a wide array of violent behavior. In its final stages, the experimenters entered the chamber and discovered that the subjects were no longer recognizable as human, having turned into something far more monstrous and surreal. The reasons for the Russian sleep experiment's popularity are multifaceted. The Cold War era is widely associated with secrecy, unethical experimentation, and human rights abuses, including forced participation in grisly trials. This climate of distrust and historical wrongdoing sets a stage for horrifying legends to thrive. When people read the Russian sleep experiment story, they often find it plausible that authoritarian regimes might have sanctioned bizarre and inhumane research. Moreover, the story's compelling narrative structure contributes to its enduring popularity. The text doesn't rely on elaborate supernatural beings or explicit monsters. Instead, it preys on fears of psychological breakdown, loss of identity, and the fragility of human sanity. Such fears are universal and not bound by culture or language, which helps explain how the story transcended its origins and found a global audience. It's also worth noting the actual harms caused by lack of sleep, which again contributed to the story jumping from a simple creepypasta to a full-on urban legend. Going without sleep for extended periods does lead to serious cognitive and psychological impairments, including hallucinations and delusions. The Expressionless is a chilling urban legend that has captivated internet audiences since its emergence in 2010. The tale recounts a disturbing incident purportedly occurring in June 1972 at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. A woman with mannequin-like features and an unsettling demeanor allegedly appeared, leaving a trail of horror in her wake. She allegedly held a kitten clamped between her teeth. After discarding the kitten, she collapsed, prompting hospital staff to take her to an examination room. Throughout the examination, the woman remained eerily calm and motionless. However, when attempts were made to sedate her, she exhibited extraordinary strength, resisting with unexpected force. At one point, she turned to a doctor and smiled, revealing long, sharp spikes instead of teeth. She then allegedly whispered, "I am God," before attacking the staff and fleeing the hospital, never to be seen again. Despite its compelling nature, there's no evidence to support the events described in the Expressionless legend. Cedars-Sinai Medical Center has no records of such an incident occurring in 1972. Furthermore, the photograph often associated with the story, a figure with an expressionless face, was taken in 1968 by Lord Snowdon, titled "Student Nurses with a Waxworks Patient." This image predates the alleged events and is unrelated to the legend, suggesting that the photograph may have inspired a creepypasta narrative. Admiral Alexander Kolchak was a pivotal figure during the era of the Russian Civil War, emerging as one of the most prominent leaders of the anti-Bolshevik, or white, forces. In the wake of the 1917 revolution and the subsequent fragmentation of imperial authority, Kolchak seized control in Siberia, proclaiming himself the supreme ruler of Russia in 1918. His claim to legitimacy and his ability to fund military campaigns were bolstered, in large part, by the immense cash of the former Russian Empire's gold reserves that fell into his hands. This hoard, initially worth hundreds of millions of rubles, represented a substantial portion of the empire's once vast financial might. Before the revolution, the gold had been held securely in Petrograd, but the approach of German forces during World War I prompted its removal first to Kazan and then Omsk. By the time Kolchak secured it, the reserve was estimated at around 650 million rubles. This encompassed not only gold ingots and coinage, but also a variety of foreign currencies, including German marks, British pounds, French francs, and American dollars. In modern terms, the aggregate value of this treasure would likely exceed a staggering $10 billion. The uncertain fate of Kolchak's gold is one of the great enigmas in Russian history, giving rise to a number of theories, legends, and scholarly debates. After Kolchak's defeat and capture in 1920, the gold reserves effectively vanished. One of the most enduring legends is that a portion of the treasure lies at the bottom of Lake Baikal, the world's deepest freshwater lake. According to local folklore and some historical speculation, a train transporting part of the gold may have derailed or plunged into the lake's frigid depths. Despite numerous modern efforts to locate sunken trains or hidden vaults, efforts even supported by sophisticated submersible technology, no conclusive evidence has ever emerged. Further complicating the mystery are the claims that Czech legionnaires serving under Kolchak might have secretly taken all or part of the reserve. Most historians, however, favor less sensational explanations. They suggest that a significant share of the gold was gradually depleted over the course of the Civil War. Weaponry, ammunition, supplies, and the enormous bribes required to maintain alliances and influence ate away at the reserves. Embezzlement and misappropriation by corrupt officials further diminished the stores. In some cases, the gold served as collateral in foreign banks in countries such as Japan, Britain, and the United States. As the White Movement faltered and the Soviet Union consolidated its power, these foreign-held assets were likely sold off to cover outstanding debts. Yet the legacy of Kolchak's gold endures, and to this day, treasure hunters still seek to get their hands on this legendary cache of wealth. If Kolchak's gold is ever discovered, those who locate it will likely hide their success behind a veil of secrecy. Fear of government seizures, international claims, or criminal involvement would encourage the finders to keep the treasure's exact whereabouts confidential. The gold could be secretly divided among trusted confidants, stored in multiple secure anonymous locations, or even laundered through complex financial instruments. Covert networks of collectors, private security, and discreet intermediaries would ensure that traces of the haul are well concealed. Only careful planning, reliable silence, and an intricate web of false leads would protect the finders from unwanted attention. This is doubly true since I have to assume that in Russia, if you find a giant cache of treasure, you don't want to be entering into the upper levels of any multi-story buildings. Herobrine is a mythical figure in the Minecraft community, often depicted as a ghostly version of the game's default character, Steve, distinguished by his haunting white eyes. Despite never being part of the official game, Herobrine has become a significant element of Minecraft's folklore, captivating players worldwide. The legend of Herobrine began in 2010 with an anonymous post on 4chan's V-board, which is dedicated to video games. The author recounted encountering a mysterious figure resembling Steve, but with white eyes, who vanished upon being spotted. Following this encounter, the player noticed unusual structures and unexplained changes in their game world. Attempts to discuss this experience online were allegedly met with deletions and a cryptic message from a user named Herobrine stating, "Stop." The post also claimed that Herobrine was the deceased brother of Marcus Notch Persson, the creator of Minecraft. However, Notch has clarified that he doesn't have a dead brother and that Herobrine was never part of the game. The story gained traction when a popular Minecraft streamer staged a hoax during a live stream. He modified the game's textures to include Herobrine, leading viewers to believe they had witnessed a genuine sighting. This event significantly amplified the legend's popularity, inspiring numerous fan-made sightings, videos, and stories. Despite Mojang's consistent denial of Herobrine's existence, the character has remained a prominent figure in Minecraft's community. The game's developers have occasionally included the phrase, "removed Herobrine," in update changelogs, acknowledging the myth humorously. Herobrine's influence extends beyond the game itself. The character has been featured in various fan-made mods, allowing players to experience encounters with the mythical figure. Notably, despite the character having never existed in the game, numerous players claim to have encountered him in unmodded Minecraft. Wormburgers have long been the subject of a persistent urban legend surrounding the fast food industry, dating back several decades. The story typically goes like this. Major fast food chains allegedly used ground-up night crawlers as a cheap filler in their hamburger patties to cut costs and boost profits. Over the years, this tale has circulated through word of mouth, chain emails, and later, social media posts. This rumor appears to have gained traction in the 1970s and 1980s, when fast food was under increasing scrutiny for its ingredients and quality. At the time, the industry was relatively opaque, and consumers did not have the same level of transparency that they do today. As a result, some people were willing to believe sensational stories that explained how burger chains could sell their products so cheaply. They assumed that unscrupulous executives might turn to earthworms, considered a cheaper protein source than beef. But even then, the economics behind such a move made little sense. Worms, if commercially sourced and processed for human consumption, wouldn't be cheaper than the low-grade beef trimmings commonly used by fast food franchises. Yes, you heard me correctly. The burger you eat would cost more if it had earthworm filler, rather than the pure low-grade beef slop it normally has. Another factor that helped perpetuate this myth is simple. It's a memorable and unsettling image. People often enjoy sharing shocking facts that turn out to be false, but gain traction through their sheer sensationalism. Consumers, curious and sometimes suspicious of corporate motives, are drawn to stories that confirm their anxieties about big business and the food they consume. As a result, the Wormburger legend continues to resurface every few years, sometimes revived by a viral social media post. Seriously, I'm sure that as I post this video, there's some trending TikTok about how the burgers you eat are totally adulterated with earthworms. The Screaming Tunnel, situated near Niagara Falls in Ontario, Canada, has long been rumored to harbor an unsettling presence and has drawn both curious visitors and paranormal enthusiasts. This limestone tunnel, which stretches approximately 125 feet, was originally built in the early 1800s as a drainage passage for the Grand Trunk Railway. It provided farmers and their livestock a safe route beneath the busy railway tracks, ensuring that the daily rhythms of commerce and agriculture could continue uninterrupted. Over the years, the Screaming Tunnel has become entrenched in local lore, its stony walls absorbing countless whispered tales of terror and grief. The most persistent legend centers on a young girl who reportedly met a violent and tragic end inside the passage. Though accounts vary, each version of the story depicts a nightmarish scenario that culminates in the child's last, desperate cries echoing through the dark. One widely circulated tale suggests she fled into the tunnel, engulfed in flames, after escaping a catastrophic fire in a nearby farmhouse. Another, more disturbing narrative implies that she was slain there by a vengeful family member embroiled in a brutal custody battle. According to long-standing tradition, anyone who stands at midnight within the dank, silent corridor and lights a match may experience something extraordinary. The flame, local storytellers say, will flicker and then suddenly snuff out, as if extinguished by an invisible hand. In that tense darkness, some claim to hear the faint, tortured screams of the girl still trapped in her final moments of terror. Of course, skeptics argue that the eerie sounds amount to nothing more than the wind whipping through the confined space, creating an acoustic anomaly. Beyond its spectral reputation, the Screaming Tunnel has also earned recognition for its unique architecture and historical significance. Its simple, utilitarian design and enduring limestone structure continue to intrigue engineers, historians, and heritage enthusiasts alike. The tunnel's aura of mystery has not gone unnoticed by popular culture either. The tunnel features in David Cronenberg's film adaptation of Stephen King's The Dead Zone, adding to its spooky reputation. The location of Jomsborg, a Viking stronghold mentioned in various sagas, remains a subject of ongoing debate among historians and archaeologists. Notably, whether Jomsborg actually existed, or whether it was a legendary location, remains the subject of debate as well, though most scholars believe it had at least some basis in reality. Jomsborg was said to be a fortress inhabited by the Jomsvikings, a group of warrior mercenaries active between the 10th and 11th centuries. The Jomsvikings were said to have been dedicated to the service of the Old Norse gods, yet their love of money and adventure meant that they would contract themselves out even to Christian rulers. Several theories have been proposed regarding its exact whereabouts, with many scholars placing it on the southern coast of the Baltic Sea, in what is now modern-day Poland. The most widely accepted theory identifies Jomsborg with the town of Wolin, situated on the island of the same name. This island is located at the mouth of the Oder River, close to the Baltic Sea. Wolin was an important trading center during the Viking Age, and its strategic location made it a plausible candidate for the fortress described in the sagas. Archaeological evidence from the area has revealed extensive remnants of a fortified settlement dating from the 10th century, further supporting the hypothesis that Jomsborg might have been located there. This evidence includes charred ramparts and a wooden pier, suggesting the presence of a military stronghold and a trading post, characteristics frequently attributed to Jomsborg in historical texts. The saga accounts of Jomsborg also create some confusion regarding its location. Early medieval chroniclers referred to the region as Vendland, complicating efforts to pinpoint the fortress's exact spot. In some texts, the fortress is conflated with the broader geographical region known as Jom, adding to the ambiguity. Despite this, the consensus among many scholars is that Wolin was the most probable location for Jomsborg, if it existed. Some alternative theories propose that Jomsborg could have been situated further east in the Baltic region, but these ideas have garnered less support due to a lack of convincing archaeological evidence.